It's the 7th of July and I'm at the Wallace Monument, and this is the perfect time and place to ask the question, was Robert the Bruce really a patriot? Hiya, I'm Bruce Fummey. If you're interested in the people, events and places in Scottish history, then subscribe to Scotland History Tours and click the bell symbol to be notified of new videos. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. Now, the reason why it's appropriate to talk about the patriotism of Robert the Bruce here and on this day in Scottish history will become clear. But first, I want to take you back to the 7th of July, 1297. Now, in an earlier video, I talked about the 1296 invasion by Edward I of England and his massacre of the population of Berwick-upon-Tweed. After those atrocities in the Battle of Dunbar, Edward subdued Scotland pretty easily. And having done so, he famously said, "It's a good thing to get rid of a turd." Aye, Edward, and you'll be wiping your arse for the rest of your life, and there'll always be an annoying tartan skid mark. Yeah, I know skid marks can't be tartan, but this wasn't Highland Klansmen either. It was medieval Scotland. Only 4 years before, Edward had crushed Wales and reduced it from an independent kingdom to a principality. He made his son, the future Edward II, the Prince of Wales, and the heir to the English throne has been the Prince of Wales ever since. Now, I should also point out that Robert the Bruce's dad, conveniently also called Robert the Bruce, was one of the knights who fought for and with Edward to crush the Welsh. Now, by this stage, Daddy Bruce was essentially an Essex nobleman with large swathes of land in the north of England, some lands in Annandale, and a son, our hero, Bruce, the Earl of Carrick, born in Scotland. Edward turned from his conquest and went south home with the Stone of Scone, the Sceptre of Scotland, and the portion of the True Cross brought by Queen Margaret 200 years before. He also took the royal records of Scotland, presumably for paper to wipe with. He'd taken the symbols of kingship, and he expected Scotland to accept the status of a principality as Wales had done before. But some turds are more difficult to get rid of than others. Did I mention that Edward had also taken much of the nobility as prisoners or hostages, leaving a vacuum which would be filled by junior, more energetic and patriotic young guns? He left 3 Englishmen in charge, of whom the Earl of Surrey, left to run Scotland, did it from England and never even bothered coming north. One man who did was the treasurer, Hugh Cressingham. His job was to extract money and send it to London, as colonisers do. Now, I've seen various figures in old money and new money, but Fiona Watson's excellent book, find a link below, suggests that in 9 months he squeezed £4 million in today's terms out of impoverished Scotland. There were speed cameras on every corner and a crackdown on TV licence fees, all to fund Edward's wars in France. It was quite a scam, really. You invade and subjugate one people, you bleed them dry in money to fund your invasion of another people, you subjugate that people, which gives you more money to invade another group. Edward had been operating this scam for a while, and let's give the guy his due, he was pretty good at it. But here's the kicker. Once you've been subdued, you're his subjects. Now, that's not just semantics. It means that you don't just have to fund his campaign, you've got to go and put your neck on the line as foot soldiers in a brutal conflict, doing the subjugating as he sits in his charger at the back. And half the Scots nobility had been carted off to prison as hostages in England, and the only way out of jail was to join. Edward didn't realise it, but in 1297 he'd gone too far and ratcheting up the pressure. He takes royal authority and the symbols of kingship. The nobility get upset. He starts imposing taxes, debts on land and seas and wool. The landowners and the merchants get upset. Now he's conscripting for foreign wars and he's coming for you. That was when people stopped paying their TV licences. One son of a minor knight even started pulling down the TV masts. His name was William Wallace. And when this young hothead, William Wallace, comes on the scene, people are desperate enough to support him. Edward was going to send them to fight in France. Now, given the choice between fighting the French in France or fighting the English here, you'd rather play at Murrayfield. Now, some minor knight knocking over TV aerials is one thing, but it's not a real threat to Edward. However, if suspect nobility got involved, the Bishop of Carlisle summoned the young Robert Bruce, Earl of Carrick, to Carlisle to discuss royal business. And then the bishop says, "While you're here, Robert, I just happen to have a holy relic in the back shop. If you just swear an oath that you'll defend King Edward's interests against these rebellious Scots, you can be on your way." Of course, Bruce swore the oath. His task now was to put down the uprising. So what does he do? Well, one of the agitators was William Douglas. Right now, Douglas and Wallace were attacking the English at Scone. Bruce goes to Douglas's property, burns it down, kidnaps his wife and their son, the young James Douglas, and he takes them to the Annandale lands of Robert Bruce's father. Now, given James Douglas's devotion to Robert the Bruce in later life, the fact that valuable hostages should have been taken to Carlisle rather than Annandale, and nobody in the English side for a minute believed that this was a genuine attempt on the part of Bruce, I think we can reasonably assume that this was a ruse, a distraction. Now, when he arrives in Annandale to call out his father's knights to support the patriotic cause, they say, "We'll think about it." Aye, right. Daddy Bruce is down in Essex supporting Edward. There's no way they're taking any risks. And this is the point. This was a huge risk for Robert the Bruce. Longshanks will confiscate his father's land. These are the lands that will become young Robert's lands. Not just the lands in Scotland and Annandale and Carrick, but the rich lands in Essex and huge swathes of the north of England. His dad must have been in Essex thinking, "What on earth are you doing?" Now, back in Annandale, young Robert gives a speech to his father's knights. "My dear friends, you know that it is true that recently at Carlisle I swore an oath, as you know and have heard. But it's null and void, since it was extorted by force. I did this thing from fear of the body, not from my own free will. No man holds his own flesh and blood in hatred, and I am no exception. I must join my own people and the nation in which I was born. I ask that you please come with me, and you will be my counsellors and close comrades." "So you're not paying your TV licence, Robert?" The Knights of Annandale said no. So Bruce headed north himself to join with William Douglas, Bishop Wishart, James the Steward and the patriotic cause. Now, he had way more to lose than his father's knights. The easy path would have been to follow his father's lead and keep his head down. But this wasn't the last time Robert Bruce looked at a task that seemed impossible and then took it on. But on the 7th of July, on this day in Scottish history, what has become known as the Noble Revolt ended in Irvine in Ayrshire. An English force had been sent north to meet this small group of patriotic nobility, and those nobles sought to negotiate a surrender. Now, one of the items on the negotiating table would undoubtedly have been the great swathes of land that Robert's father would lose. But the Scots Patriots insisted on going back and forth. It's about the TV licences, it's about fighting in France, it's not about Edward, it's about getting tea breaks and paid bank holidays. They dragged out the negotiations for over a month. And all the time, William Wallace was in the Selkirk forest preparing foot soldiers to descend from this hill to meet the English down below at Stirling Bridge. Was Robert worried about the lands and titles that his family would lose by defying Edward? Duh! He was a medieval nobleman. Was he ruthless in his desire to be King of Scots? You betcha. But if he thought that this was the time to go all in, hold nothing more than a pair of twos, he must be the worst poker player in history. In the last year, Berwick had been wiped out and slaughtered. The Battle of Dunbar had been lost. The bulk of the Scots nobility were in chains. Scotland was occupied. Your father is essentially a hostage to Edward. His knights won't support you. And you want to raise the stakes when you don't even have a cunning plan. Who does that? Unless maybe he was a patriot. I think he probably was. And the Nobles' Revolt was the first time he showed his hand. If you'd like to show your support for Scotland History Tours with a crowdfunding community to make more of these videos, then please click on the video link below to see how can I support Bruce. You can start your support by liking and sharing this video. I mean, Doc is going to be a llama alive. Cheery and Rasta.